For the last 2 years, I've been making a habit of celebrating Halloween with whatever dumb crap is in my possession. First it was a bunch of spooky vinyl records, then it was a two-headed video game cartridge. But this year I figured we'd bust out a tabletop game.
Pretty sneaky, sis.
As you've probably already noticed, I tend to favor goofy pop culture over genuine scares. Which is why, instead of something like The Trail at House on the Hill, or Horrified, or I Want to Bite Your Finger,
He didn't bite me!
I will instead be taking a look at Monster Crunch, the breakfast battle game. If you're a fan of breakfast cereals, you are no doubt familiar with the famous trio of General Mills monster mascots. In 1971, Frankenberry and Count Chocula were introduced, along with their respective cereals. And even though they were based on horror creatures, the scariest thing about these two was the sugar content of their breakfast. Oh, and that brief period when Frankenberry turned your stool pink. In 1973, General Mills added a third monster cereal to the lineup, Boo Berry. I think you could figure out what flavor that cereal was. For decades, Frankenberry and Count Chocula acted like the odd couple, bickering over whose cereal is better, sometimes joined by Boo Berry, oftentimes scared off at the end by something innocuous. It was a perfect dynamic, one that General Mills upset in 1974 with the introduction of Fruit Root cereal. And while eventually discontinued in 1982, the product made a couple of appearances in Quentin Tarantino films. It was briefly reintroduced in 2013. Yummy Mummy, another fruit-flavored monster cereal, came along in 1987. Yummy was the least successful of the bunch, only lasting until 1993. Like Fruit Root, it too was briefly revived in 2013 when General Mills released all 5 monster cereals for Halloween. Nowadays, the main trio of cereals are only offered seasonally, but the characters are memorable enough to have inspired a line of non-edible tie-in merchandise. For example, this card game. Monster Crunch, the breakfast battle game, was released in 2018 by Forced Pruzan Creative. They were later acquired by Funko, the company that made an art form out of licensing literally every single morsel of pop culture that someone, somewhere, might remember. Inside the box you have a baggie full of milk tokens, instructions, 5 individual bowls with the character names on the back in case you have trouble matching the colors to the monsters, a stack of 10 monster power cards, and 5 individual decks of cards with numbers on the reverse side. The premise of Monster Crunch involves a cereal eating contest between the monsters. The idea is to try and play as many of your cards as possible over 3 rounds. Yeah, it's not a terribly deep game. It's something you play while you're waiting for the pizza to be delivered. Every monster has 36 cards in their deck, each hand consisting of 12 at a time. They also start off with a single carton of milk and a pair of unique powers. The player who had last eaten cereal in real life starts the round, playing a card into their bowl. The next player plays a card that is equal to or higher than the last card played, and so forth. A player can use the milk carton in their possession to play an extra card, either different values in numerical order, or multiple cards of the same value. The total value of those combined cards becomes the target value the player has to match or beat. When a player is unable to play a card, or just doesn't feel like it, they pass their turn, pull the cards played out of their bowl and place into their scoring pile, collect a milk token, and are out for the rest of the hand. Play continues until there's only one player left. That last player pulls the cards out of his or her bowl, does not collect the milk token, and starts a new hand with the remaining cards. Once a player gets rid of all their cards, the round ends immediately. All cards are put into the scoring piles, and all unplayed cards are discarded from the game. A new round starts with 12 cards dealt from each player's pile. Each player has unique abilities that can temporarily alter the rules, help eliminate more cards from their hand, or give players a leg up in some way. You may only use them once per game, and some are definitely less useful than others. It's kind of a shame each character only has the same 2 abilities permanently attached to them instead of there being more to rotate or a singular pool of special ability cards, just to add some variety. At the end of the 3rd and final round, the player who has eaten the most cereal, that is, has the most cards in their scoring pile, wins. And hopefully that pizza will arrive any minute now. I can appreciate the strategy involved trying to balance playing as many cards as possible while also keeping players from doing the same. While it may seem that you'll want to shut players out early, doing so gives them extra milk cartons for use in subsequent hands, allowing them to combine cards in one turn for higher values. Design-wise, I absolutely love the attention to detail in this game's packaging, from cards that look like tiny cereal boxes to the colorful bowl playing mats. Everything seems sturdy and well made. That said, I don't know how many of my friends would actually want to sit down and play the breakfast battle game. Granted, I never bothered asking any of them, but I feel like any nostalgia for these monsters begins and ends in the cereal aisle, and possibly Saturday morning cartoon commercials. Role-playing as Frankenberry or Count Chocula or Fruit Brute shoveling cereal down their throats doesn't sound like a compelling premise for a tabletop game. However, you may be a fan of quick pick-up-and-play games such as these. If so, you can certainly do worse than the breakfast battle game. Meanwhile, there's only so much you could say about a card game with a 20-minute average playtime. So in keeping with the Monster Cereal theme, I decided to bust out my copy of the Monsters Go Disco cardboard flexi-disc from 1979. This was one of 3 records found on specially marked packages, the other 2 being Count Chocula Goes to Hollywood and Monster Adventures in Outer Space.
Oh yes, I can see it now. I'm so light on my feet, I'll boogie all night. I'm so handsome, all the girls will hustle with me.
After we learn to disco, it's goodbye to sitting home on Saturday nights.
Of course, while it's a nice collectible, the problem with these records is that they don't hold up to even the slightest crease. I needed to use this portable record player, which applies more weight in the stylus, just to get discernible audio out of it. But it's still not great. So I'll just play you out with some audio I found on YouTube by someone who owned a cleaner copy. Hope you had a safe and fun Halloween, and I will see you next time.
There's a new craze sweeping the country. Monster Mania, Monster Mania.
Harder than Bob, just boogie and hop it.
Monster Mania, Monster Mania.
Jump up and down, then fall on the floor.
Roll around, get up, and do it some more. It's
Monster